Is Nike stock a buy, sell, or a hold? I'm going to answer that question in this video, looking at the company's revenue, cash flow, profits, and valuation to come up with the conclusion. So let's jump right in, starting with revenue. And you'll notice Nike's trailing 12-month revenue over the last decade has grown very nicely, almost doubling from around 26 billion up to 51.22 billion in that time frame. Interestingly, the company was making good progress in expanding its operating profit margin during the aftermath of the pandemic, but that has since started coming down again at 11.55% most recently. Nike has been improving its gross profit margin. One of the strategies this management team has implemented is cutting out as many wholesalers as they feel they can and going direct to consumer with their website, the app, and expanding their brick and mortar locations as well in an effort to increase the profit margin, because if they want to sell through third-party wholesalers, they've got to sell the products to them at lower prices and thereby intake lower profit margins. And so the direct-to-consumer movement has been working well. The app, the website has been growing very nicely, and that's been boosting Nike's profit margins. What's been hurting in the last year or so is the company's overreaction to inventory shortages. Initially, after the onset of the pandemic, demand soared for Nike's products, and the company didn't have enough to sell, given the supply chain disruptions that happened due to the pandemic. And so Nike overreacted to that, built up way too much inventory, especially on the apparel side. And now they're working through that inventory. They're offering more promotions, more discounts to work through that overinvestment in inventory. And those discounts, promotions, and incentives are working to bring down Nike's operating profit margin. Longer term, however, I suspect that this movement to go direct to consumer is going to boost Nike's profit margins. Nike's one of the few brands that has the clout to do that, to go direct to consumer, because of the power of the brand. You notice the company's got 51 billion in revenue. Few brands have this kind of reach and scale. And so because Nike's built up to this scale, it has that opportunity to cut out wholesalers and also increase their negotiating power with wholesalers, because now they've got that threat to go to wholesalers and say, well, you know what, if you're not willing to pay these higher prices for our products, then we're just going to cut you out, or we're going to significantly reduce inventory to your store. And you've seen the negative side effects that can have. If you want to see that, look at Foot Locker. Look at what's happened to Foot Locker, right? Nike significantly reduced the amount of inventory it sends to Foot Locker, and Foot Locker's sales and business has been hurt dramatically as a result of that move. And so Nike can hold that over other wholesalers and say, look, you've got to give us these higher prices or we're going to cut you out and go direct to consumer. So that's an interesting longer term tailwind to Nike's business, even though in the short term right now, as they work through these inventory gluts, their profit margin may be pressured. The next thing I wanted to look at is the cash flow from operations in the trailing 12 months. That's rebounded to 5.841 billion for the same reason I was just talking about, the inventory, right? So initially, as Nike built up that inventory, the cash flow from operations came down because it's spending money to bring in inventory. And now that it realized it had too much inventory, it's reduced the inventory orders and creation of the newer inventory. And so now it's just selling off existing inventory, and that's boosting cash flow from operations. Looking at finally valuation, Nike stock has arguably never been cheaper. It's trading at a forward price to earnings of 22, and The reasons why the stock price is down, I've already talked about, right? The inventory glut, the decreasing profit margin, the increasing incentives to try and get rid of that inventory. That's all worked against Nike. And one thing I didn't mention just yet is the slower economic reopening in China. Nike was counting on a strong rebound in economic growth as China's economy reopened from COVID lockdowns. That hasn't come to fruition as strongly as Nike was expecting or Nike investors were expecting. And so its stock price is muted as a result. However, I think that's a buying opportunity. So I guess that answers the question, is Nike stock a buy, sell, or a hold? I think Nike stock is a buy right now.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.